Hello, and thank you for tuning in. My basic premise in this series of videos is this. America is the best country in the world, but we are not at our best right now. States that are comfortably blue or red are doubling down on policies that are red meat for their base, and the opposition to the majority of these states is moving to other states where they feel like they'll fit in better. I'm going to do a quick analysis of each state's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I'm going to look at how each state relates to their political friends, foes, and frenemies. I'm going to have fun with it, and we won't be too serious, but there is a lot to call each of these states out on. So here we go. And before we get too much further along, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Thanks.
Sweet home Alabama. Deep South, the deep insulated South. Alabama with a protective moat of other southern states to keep Yankees out. A state out to prove that it is the most socially conservative state in the union to make sure Yankees stay out. Is Alabama in growth mode or is it in protectionist mode? Let's investigate.
To the Telestrator we go. Let's look at Alabama. First up, you have Birmingham, which is the largest city and metropolitan area in the state. It is an incredibly shrinking city. It has shrank so much in population since the 1960s. It has some hotty-toddy suburbs, and it also has some suburbs that rank as some of the most murderous towns in the United States. Lots going on in Birmingham. Then you have to the northeast, you have Huntsville. Huntsville has the best local economy in the state. It's got NASA and military installations that are located nearby, and it has a lot of military contractors that are in the area getting fat off of these installations. It has one of the largest office parks in the country. You also have the Tennessee River floating nearby Huntsville, and you also have the beginnings of the Appalachians Mountains right in this area here, getting you up towards Chattanooga. It is the most beautiful part of the state, and Huntsville is probably the best economy in the state. Probably would want to live in Huntsville out of all the towns. Next up, you have your state capital. You have Montgomery. Montgomery's fine. It's just a state capital. It's kind of a regional center that pulls in a lot of people skittering in from the pine forests that are in and around Montgomery. And then you have to the south, you have Mobile. Mobile is your port city, and it is near Gulf Shores on the Floribama coast. Some of the least expensive real estate on saltwater in this country is here, but you might say you get what you pay for. And then the other thing I just point out is, hey, you don't have any national parks here. You have a very tiny Gulf beach. You don't have a lot of pretty things going for yourself here in Alabama.
Look, the one thing that Alabama is known for, and the one safe thing you can attempt to start a conversation with someone from Alabama with, is college football. No state has done college football over the last century better than Alabama. The University of Alabama Crimson Tide is the most recognizable brand in the state. The sport is a divider. Alabama versus Auburn is the biggest rivalry in college football. It is a uniter. It allows blacks and whites to talk about something that makes grown men hug at Wild Wings rather than the important issues that face the state. Another strength is the cost of living. It is cheap to live here relative to the rest of the country. There are cheap houses, cheap groceries. If you have money, it does go further here. Notice that if you have money is a big if when you talk about the cost of living and quality of life in Alabama. Well, that was a delightful yet terse review of Alabama's strengths. On to its weaknesses. The Alabama K-12 education system is a dumpster fire. Alabama ranks last in efficiency and outcomes as measured by the conservative think tank, the Cato Institute. Richer Alabamans try to offset this by buying their kids a private school education, but when you do this, it starts to make the cost of living in Alabama more expensive, and that ebbs away at one of the key advantages to living here. Another fun weakness related to Alabama's terrible K-12 system is that the top public university here is more interested in educating people from other states than Alabama. Alabama has a shallow pool of qualified students for admission to the University of Alabama. So Alabama shops other states to find better qualified students. As a result, the university is educating a lot of people who have no roots to the state and who are not likely to stay in the state of Alabama. Alabama is just one of 2 southern states that is a net exporter of college students. That is hard to do when you live in the middle of the fastest growing region of the United States. You don't think the best and brightest Alabama graduates are going to leave? Well, what is the value proposition to staying? There are no big companies based in Alabama. Alabama has one Fortune 500 company, Regions Financial. Have you heard of them? Neither have I. And the bank got a little wobbly in 2023 along with a lot of other regional banks. Lots of companies do business in Alabama, but when they do, it is usually to take advantage of the cheap labor force here. A lot of foreign car manufacturers build cars and don't have to worry about high wages or unions here. When you don't have a lot of companies based in your state, you tend to have a competitive disadvantage with how well trained your workforce is relative to other states. Conservatives and liberals agree Alabama has one of the worst taxation systems in the country. The worst part of its tax system is the sales tax, which can get close to 10%. You normally see a 10% sales tax in a state that has no income tax, but Alabama has a 5% income tax. This may not seem bad, but all of Alabama's neighbors have a more attractive tax system than Alabama does. Well, this may seem obvious, but Alabama has the opportunity to invest more dollars in K-12 education and change people's lives at an early age. The best access kids have to escaping poverty is an education. Homegrown kids can start matriculating into the University of Alabama at higher rates. More skilled labor starts to stay here in Alabama and build careers or start companies. Look at this list of top employers based in Alabama. It's a bunch of quasi-governmental institutions and a bank at the top of your list. There's nowhere to go but up here. The problem with this opportunity, of course, is that this has been an obvious area of investment for generations, and the state has chosen not to do it.
Alabama's governor likes to get into the culture wars and get into Twitter fights with progressive states and the governor of California. Alabama's biggest threats are much closer to home. Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida all border the state of Alabama and have much better economies than Alabama. They are not all that much more expensive to live in than Alabama. They all have a stronger value proposition to attract people and businesses. They have more attractive tax structures. During the 2010s, people voted with their butts. Way more people moved into Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee than Alabama.
Another threat to the state of Alabama, at least to its economic development over the long term, is its particular brand of tough guy conservatism. Alabama makes a lot of news for its political leaders taking hard lines on social issues, whether it's Tommy Tuberville, the middling coach turned U.S. Senator, preventing promotions in the U.S. military over abortion policies, or the Alabama Supreme Court declaring embryos children. Alabama simply does not have enough going for it overall, where they're going to be able to attract more people and growth to compete with its neighbors. Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida, they have enough going for it where people may hold their nose if these types of states adopt policies that are pretty strict socially. Not Alabama. I think at the end of the day, Alabama is more interested in keeping its power structure intact than it is in growing its economy. At the end of the day, Alabama is a state people dream of leaving rather than dream of moving to. While Texas, Florida, and Georgia are the engine, wheels, and body of the vehicle moving the South forward as the fastest growing region in the United States, Alabama is kind of the window flag hanging off the side of the vehicle.
Alabama is just along for the ride with the rest of the South until it does a better job of investing in its own people to create wealth and growth.